So we begin this layer by adding black. I always start with the darkest color and work my way towards the lightest color. Making a few mistakes here, but it's not really a big deal. We'll just fix it up really easily. Now the paint is the consistency of somewhere in between ink and oil. We're a little bit more careful with each layer that we paint. So I wipe the brush off, and with a damp brush, I try to brush out the mistakes I made earlier. If it leaves like a little residue, it's not a big deal. I'll cover it later. And again, we're trying to cover. I went in with a hair dryer and dried the black paint. And yeah, we're trying to cover, but also we're going to begin blending. Blending is basically mixing paint on the canvas. And when we blend, we do it with a light touch. We blend with the side of the brush. We blend with the belly. What I'm doing right now is trying to fill in the areas around the space that I'll be blending. Where the colors meet is what I paint in last, because I need the paint to be wet in order to blend. This is a wet over dry technique. Again, the very last thing I do is add wet paint where the colors meet. Now I come in with color number 3. And I get the colors really close together. And there's a good amount of paint on the brush. I don't overload it, but the paint needs to be wet in order to blend. So now I'm beginning to blend with a very light touch. Very short, feathery brush strokes is what I'm using. And I blend and try to keep the shape. See how I'm going around in a circle? And you can also see that where the colors meet, they form a new color. Now, if you go too high up, you're going to add that new color to another color, and you don't necessarily want to do that. And at this stage, the blends won't be so perfect, so I don't worry too much or trouble myself too much trying to blend it in perfectly. See, with color 3, I only painted in half the space. I'm filling up the rest of the space because I want the paint to be wet when it's ready to blend. See, with color number 3, I wait to fill in the top part because that's where that color meets the other color, and I need it to be wet. Even though it's a wet over dry technique, we're still blending two wet colors together. So I add a generous amount of paint, but not too much. Now, if by chance the color dries on the canvas, you can always add a little bit more paint. And now I'm going in to blend it. Same kind of feathery brush strokes. And as you see, a line is starting to form. That line is where the colors mix. And you can clearly see it. I continue to work these two colors together. Eventually, it's something you get a feel for. When you mix the two colors together, a third color forms. Sometimes it's necessary to feather the edges of this third color. So you have the bottom part mixing in with, say it's color 3, and we're mixing color 4 together. We're blending them. Well, where that new color meets color 3, I go in and blend. And where it meets color 4, I go in and blend just a little bit. I'll refresh the paint. Now I'm adding color number 5. Now, because these colors are so similar, they're so light, they should blend together perfectly. It's easier to blend in lighter colors than it is to blend in darker colors. It's easier to blend in lighter colors than it is to blend in darker colors. I go in and make sure it's completely covered. All right. As you can see, the paint is covered a lot better, and we have our first layer of blending complete. Now we're just going to go in and do the same thing for the next layer.